Officials in Afghanistan say thousands of people are in need of clean water and food following a devastating earthquake. More than 1,000 people were killed in the quake.
Now there's tight security in the Afghan capital, Kabul, where the Taliban are holding their first big gathering since they seized power last year.
This is a time for expanded consciousness, when we take control of the earth and become more mindful of human rights. This is a time to collaborate and have more connections with like-minded people. This is the time for change. Everything is changing, including the Taliban. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is surrounded by all-round crisis. It used to depend on Pakistan a fair bit, and then recently China and Pakistan. But the Taliban have now started pushing to improve relations with the world. Since the withdrawal of US forces last year, the Taliban have remained untouchable to the world. However, the country is struggling. It's struggling with terrorism, hunger, poverty and disease, and it's very difficult to get them out of this situation, especially with sanctions on the country. But the Taliban are trying, and they're trying very hard. And their dedication should be commended. They've finally realized that in order for Afghanistan to succeed, they must put the interests of the Afghan people first and work with the world. That's why they've inked a deal with the United Arab Emirates in respect to Kabul airport and not Turkey. The Taliban are ready to hand over the airport operation completely to the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates do have experience. They've operated an Afghan airport before. The report by Reuters says that under the agreement with the United Arab Emirates, Afghans will be stationed at the airport. This includes deployment of Afghan security guards. In fact, the Taliban want to show to the world that they can create jobs. And at the same time, the Taliban completely reject the presence of foreign forces. Turkey wanted to put boots on the ground, but the Taliban have refused. Thank goodness for that. The fact that the Taliban have inked a deal with the United Arab Emirates and not Turkey, who wanted to control the airport, is good news, because we know what would happen if Turkey got hold of the operations at the airport. We'd probably see a lot more Shamima Begums around the world, and nobody wants that. A lot of people used to say the Taliban is just a creation of the ISI, the Pakistani Secret Intelligence Service, and that Pakistan controls the Taliban. But that's also changed today. Let me tell you, Taliban is supplying coal to Pakistan in exchange for local currency. Pakistan is facing an energy crisis these days, and the Taliban have shown cleverness in this unofficial coal deal with Pakistan, so it's not seen as a puppet of Pakistan. The Taliban has raised the price of coal. The Taliban raised prices hours after Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif decided to allow import of coal from Afghanistan in rupee terms to save foreign exchange and reduce dependence on South African coal. However, in the midst of this financial crisis, Sharif is trying to provide cheap and quick electricity to Pakistanis, but on the other hand, the Taliban have increased the rates of coal. According to South Asia Index, the price of coal has been increased from $90 a ton to $200 a ton, and a custom duty has been slapped of 30%. Last week, Mufti Ismatullah Burhan, the spokesperson of Afghanistan's Ministry of Petroleum and Minerals, said that there was no agreement on coal between the two countries and the Taliban would use coal as pressure on Pakistan. Mufti Burhan added that the government of Afghanistan sell coal to local Afghan industrialists, and then these industrialists then export it to Pakistan. And he also said Pakistan is not important to Afghanistan. It's the local businessmen, the Afghans, who are important, and the government is providing them relief. Like it or not, but the Taliban are growing closer to Narendra Modi's India. And there's a big reason for that. Whilst Muslim countries have been busy fighting proxy wars in places like Iraq, Syria and Libya, and sadly, some mullahs in Pakistan even promoting prophecies of an end-times battle known as Ghazwa-e-Hind, a holy raid on India, where black flags emerge from Afghanistan, supposedly the Taliban carrying them and conquering lands all the way to Jerusalem. And please don't tell me these prophecies aren't used to recruit terrorists. Go tell ISIS-K, ISIS Khorasan out there who are breeding like rabbits. And it's not just me telling you this. Pakistani government itself admits to the problem.
Court. For more than a decade, Pakistan claimed that Sajid Mir was in fact dead. But now, years later, it has been proven that not only is he alive, he has now been found guilty over a terror financing case. The country's anti-terrorism court has also fined him around $19,000 according to his lawyer. He was arrested in the month of April and since then has been kept in Lahore Central Jail.
Pakistan has recently convicted two figures behind the 2008 Mumbai attack and is going after terror funding sources, paving the way for its removal from the G7 watch list. Whilst all that is happening in Pakistan, India has been looking at ways to work with the people of Afghanistan. So far this year, India has shipped 20,000 metric tons of wheat, thousands of vaccines, medicine and winter clothing to Afghanistan. At the same time, during Corona, 75,000 tons of wheat were sent by India to Afghanistan through the Iranian Chabahar port. And recently, India has reopened its embassy in Kabul. And of course, India isn't doing that because it's in love with the Taliban government, because that's not the truth. It's because of China and Pakistan. They don't want China and Pakistan to remain close to the Taliban, because if that happens, India will suffer the biggest loss. Pakistan can increase terrorism in India through Taliban, while China can harm India on the economic front. Historically, India's experience with the old Taliban has been quite rough, but the new Taliban has said that it will not allow its land to be used for terrorist activities, so therefore India has started to communicate. Afghanistan's proximity to Pakistan is a big risk to India's strategic interests and security interests, and India has already spent billions of rupees in the last 20 years. It will not want that to go to waste. Although it's very early for the Indian government to recognize the Taliban, but in the not too distant future, expect some sort of normalization. The Taliban have changed, and expect them to change even more. According to the prophecy, a non-stop army will rise from the land of Khorasan holding black flags of Islam in the end times. This hadith does have some fascinating history. It's found in Sunan at-Tirmidhi, written by Imam at-Tirmidhi from Uzbekistan, who lived under the Abbasid rule. It's been marked as weak by scholars. This hadith was used by some to justify following the Abbasid revolution. It was used by Abu Muslim in the uprising leading to the Abbasid revolution in 747 and is associated with the Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasid revolution against the Umayyad Caliphate adopted black for its flag. As you can see, it was pitch black, without any writing. The Abbasid revolution was motivated by the black standards out of Khorasan, tradition associated with Imam Mahdi, the redeemer and reformer of our time. And guess what? The Abbasids even had a caliph called al-Mahdī. After the Khorasan region was taken over in the Arab conquest in the 7th century, Khorasan became a part of the Umayyad Caliphate. The prophecy derives from the 8th century Abbasid revolution, a revolution that began in Khorasan and saw the end of the privileged Arabs over non-Arabs in the Islamic Empire. Anyway, what's interesting about this hadith is, and the reason why I say yes and no, is because it has the tendency to repeat itself. Maybe that's why the Taliban changed their black flag to white. Who knows? Self-fulfilling prophecies do happen. When people think in a certain way and work together, they actually work towards the prophecy. And that nearly happened when the United States, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan were recruiting for people against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Many scholars were saying the black banners have risen, so go out there and boot out the Soviets. Although people did gather under many black flags out there in Afghanistan, nobody reached Jerusalem. The reason why I'm saying this might repeat again is because the Taliban have made it clear that they will not have any normalization with Israel. Unlike the current Pakistani regime, there's backdoor talks happening between the imported Pakistani regime and Israel. My gut feeling is West Khorasan, which is modern day Iran, and East Khorasan, modern day Afghanistan, would unite. They already have an understanding between them, discussing railway links, and Iran has been sending a lot of aid there too, to Kabul. With Russia in the picture, who's not all too happy about Israel's stance on Ukraine, Israel might start to see not just Iranians in the vicinity, but Afghans too. Who knows? The world is full of surprises.